class. Today we are going to study one poem from the contemporary American poet Sherman Alexie. The name of the poem is Evolution. As we know that Sherman Alexie is not only a poet but also a screenwriter, filmmaker, a novelist, and he has been awarded various awards throughout his career. But the most important aspect of Sherman Alexie's creative work are about the native Indians and their problems on the face of colonization and their deprivation from their native rights. So, this poem is an ironic commentary on the systemic obliteration, appropriation, and exploitation of indigenous culture and Indian people. Through the character of the famous real life American showman and opportunistic soldier, William Frederick Cody, popularly known as Buffalo Bill, the poet critiques and depicts how indigenous people have been subjected to exploitation, oppression, and violence by the white colonists from Europe, and how their lives are deeply ridden with poverty, alcoholism, and the lifelong marginalization. Here, we can bring a similarity between the poem and a 20th century novel, Heart of Darkness, where the narrator, Marlowe, is narrating about Courage, the character, who can be equated with Buffalo Bill, who exploits the African natives through his ivory trade, and how he puts them into or pushes them into the marginalization and even extinction. So, this poem here, Alexie talks about how the white Americans exploit Native American people and their culture through the central character Buffalo Bill, who is the antagonist and who represents the white settlers and symbolizes a cultural erasure of indigenous communities. He opens a pawnshop in an Indian reservation, that is the area designated for federally recognized indigenous tribes to live. And this is an irony because the very land to which they belong, it has been snatched away from them and they have been made to live in the reservation, which seems to be a very benevolent act on the part of the encroachers. So, this is the irony that is also highlighted in this poem. And Buffalo Bill, who emerges here in this reservation as an innocent, neutral character who pawns the goods from the Native Americans to provide them with some value in exchange for their livelihood. Ultimately, how he is able to take away all their identity, all their heritage, and becomes the master of it. So, the whole system of exploitation by the white colonizers is very poignantly presented through the poem, and how at the end Bill takes everything from the people and own them up, and very ironically opens the Museum of Native American Cultures. So this is a darkly humorous ending in the poem, which brings out very vividly the selfishness on the part of these colonizers and their exploitative nature. So, if we go towards the poem, we see the title of the poem Evolution. The term evolution is coming from the source of the Bible, as well as in later on period it has been explained by the scientific uh, presentation. But here the poet points out the dark and grim realities of the lives of Native American people who constantly suffered at the hands of exploitative white oppressors, and simultaneously battling the issues such as alcoholism, gambling, poverty in their respective reservations through the so called imposed urbanization by the European settlers. So, the poem is actually a commentary on years of systemic oppression and cultural appropriation that white people meted out to the native ones. And here, the central character, Bill, continues taking everything he can get his hands on of the indigenous people and pays a pittance for them, so that his sole aim is to selfishly gain and plunder as much as possible, which is an extended metaphor for white settlers' atrocities and plundering of native people. So, discussing about the poem, once again we find that this poem, as usual, is a pre-verse poem, is having the form of five tercets with unequal lines, unequal lengths, and because we consider it as a postmodern poem, so it deliberately deviates from the notions of rigid versification and structure. And the poem is written in the third person point of view. The speaker is a distant yet omniscient narrator who gives an account of the happenings in the Indian reservation where Buffalo Bill tries his hands. And the poem is free verse, as well as it is not following any particular meter, and it is using many poetic devices, basically the irony that already we have discussed, which is very much uh, manifested at the end of the poem, though it is there throughout the poem, and there are liberal sprinkling of alliterations, repetitions, enjambment, symbolism, so and so. So let us look at the poem. Buffalo Bill's Buffalo Bill opens a pawn shop on the reservation right across the border from the liquor store, and he stays open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So this first tercet, though it is only three lines, but the three lines very vividly presents the condition of the Native Americans, the motive of the exploiter, and the vision, the near future vision of these people who belong to the American tribes. So Buffalo Bill, the character, the central character in the poem, he opens a pawn shop on the reservation. The reservation, already we have said that reservation is a land reserved for the people of Native America. That means the settlers have confined them to a land, and at the same time they are erasing their atrocities by implying through this reservation that as if they are more concerned about these people to preserve them for future. So the reservation. And this man comes and opens a pawn shop near the reservation right across the border from a liquor store. And there is a liquor store. So liquor store and pawn shop, they are very significantly present here in the poem, where it is meant that it encourages the native people to come to fall in trap to the alcoholism, and for that they have to pawn or sell all their valuables or whatever goods are there at their home. That means the white civilization is encouraging these natives, these colored people, to sell whatever they are having and to become a victim of their own business, that is through the liquor. They will be extracting the last drop of their life sustaining resources. And his stays open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And the pawn shop is open 24 hours and 7 days a week. Why? Because it is encouraging the people to come and visit the liquor shop, because they won't be deficit of the source or resource to get their liquor. So this is an open invitation to the people to be exploited. So in these 3 lines, the poem moves very sequentially with a beginning, middle, and an ironic end. Right from the first few lines, Alexie communicates the historical and cultural context of the poem. It is very deliberately depicted that Buffalo Bill has opened up that shop across the liquor store as a manipulative and cunning intention of him. His cunningness is also highlighted through the line, he stays open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So it is to extract the maximum possible benefits from his venture and translate it into monetary means. And these 3 lines also highlight that how the settlers have put the native people through the alcoholism and gambling to take out all resistance as well as all resources from them. The next starts set, and the Indians come running in with jewelry, television sets, a VCR, a full-length beaded buckskin outfit. It took Inez Muse 12 years to finish Buffalo Bill. So all the Indians, they're running because they have found a way out for meeting their alcoholic demands. So they come running with jewelry. At the first stage, there is the jewelry. Then the modern gadgets, their houses are having television sets, a VCR, a full-length beaded buckskin outfit, and then a traditional outfit, which took the artist Inez Muse 12 years to finish. So how these people, they're mindless of their culture, their tradition, and they're selling it at the pawn shop for their drinks. So here in these lines, the beaded buckskin outfit become important as an indigenous person is selling something that one of their people in his muse painstakingly wove for 12 years. It is a harsh depiction of the extent to which addictions have pervaded Native Americans. And through these lines also we find that how Buffalo Bill collects all these items and pays the pittances for them. He treats every object that the indigenous people bring similarly. There is no difference for him between the beaded buckskin garment and that of the TV or VCR. So, while Bill doesn't treat the precious item as anything important and stores it like any other object, he then proceeds to display it in the museum at the end and profits from it. So here it is the greedy nature of the shopkeeper that is being highlighted, and the shopkeeper is representing the whole white invaders who want to exploit them and reap all the benefits for themselves without acknowledging the rightful origins and ownership of their culture. In the next torset, we find takes everything the Indians have to offer, keeps it all catalogued and filed in a storage room. The Indians pawn their hands, saving the thumbs for last they pawn. So, this is a very poignant depiction of the whole process of pawning. And pawning for what? Not for surviving, but for their alcoholism. So, Buffalo Bill takes everything the Indians have to offer. He takes whatever they bring in and keeps it all catalogued and filed in a storage room. But he keeps all these items, he takes them equally, but he makes a catalogue of them, separates them according to their oath. And the Indians pawn their hands, saving the thumbs for last they pawn. And gradually, what is happening? The poet is trying to tell, or the narrator is giving us the idea that ultimately the native Indians have pawned everything, as if now they are pawning their own body parts, their hands, saving the thumbs for the last. So, in this way, this third stanza is presenting the oppression and exploitation meted out to the indigenous people by the pawner Will, and he continues to monetize their culture. It is excruciatingly and disturbingly painful for the speaker who speaks with these lines, where the colonial idea of profit and self-gain is highlighted. And the desperation on the part of the Native Americans is very much shown, and that poverty is highlighted when they are mentioned as pawning their hands and saving their thumbs to the last. So here, Bill is violently suppressing many Native Americans. And what is his character? The character comes out that he is not only an exploiter, but also he wants to decimate the whole race or the whole tribe. So through Bill, it is the depiction of the colonizers that they not only want to extract this last single item, but also they want to erase them, their culture, from the face of the earth. So the savagery and adventure, which is being highlighted through their mode of civilizing the uncivilized, civilizing the aborigines, it is being presented here in the poem. Their mission of civilizing, or the mission of civilization, or the white man's burden, all these slogans, they have been proved by the poet as hollow, selfish. So here the poet is bringing out the situation of the Native Americans and how they have become the victim of these white people in multiple ways. Then in the next stanza, he is telling their skeletons falling endlessly from the skin, and when the last Indian has pawned everything but his heart, Buffalo Bill takes that for $20. So this is just portraying the nature of the white colonizers, that how they are taking each and everything. They are taking the old skeletons kept in the houses of these Native Americans, and even they are pawning his heart, the last heart, and it is also being pawned. So it may look very exaggerative for the reader that someone is pawning someone's heart, but it is highlighting that to the extent how these native people are being exploited through the process of colonization, which I already told that novel by Joseph Conrad, The Heart of Darkness, very poignantly presents through the exploitation of Kurch and revealed through Marlowe. So here they pawn their skeletons falling endlessly from the skin. It is highly graphic and horrific, a presentation about these ideas. And now Bill doesn't hesitate to squeeze every last inkling of money from the native people and then some more. The final line of this tercet is the height of inhuman cruelty. And here, through this grim image, he points out how colonialists would go to any length to subjugate indigenous people and their culture. If it brings them personal gain, then they won't hesitate. They would plunder native people until they couldn't give them anything more. In this way, Alexie talks about the unthinkable dehumanization and exploitation that have become everyday realities for the Native Americans. In the next verset, he is telling closes up the pawnshop, paints a new sign over the old, calls his venture the Museum of Native American Cultures, charges the Indians $5 a head to enter. And this particular stanza is highlighting the hypocrisy of the so-called civilized people or the missionaries of civilization. So he's telling that finally when Bill took everything from these people, he closes up the pawnshop and paints a new sign over it and converts it into the Museum of Native American Cultures. So this is the evolution. The title is also suggesting this is the evolution. The pawnshop evolved into the cultural museum of the native people of America and charges the Indians $5 a head to enter. And the height of irony is that those people who want everything of their own, they have to visit their own items by paying the $5, and in the name of the museum, Bill is heightening his own glory as if he is the preserver of their culture and identity. So this is the hypocrisy. So Alexie uses his characteristic irony and dark satire even more to depict the plight of indigenous people. And Buffalo Bill, the representative of the white colonial oppression, embodies the ideals of profit and materialism even further than the previous stanza. Just when it appears as if he can no longer extract anything else from the individuals, he opens up a museum displaying their lost tradition. So, the name of the establishment, the Museum of Native American Cultures, is filled with irony, and Bill emerges as a savior of the Native American culture. And the history of pain, marginalization, and oppression gets erased and whitewashed through this venture. So, this is the purpose of the poet to present here, that how everything has been whitewashed, all their selfish purposes, manipulative purposes have been whitewashed, put under the carpet, and given a new color of benevolence, championing their causes. So, the colonial appropriation of indigenous culture goes one step further when Alexie ironically depicts that Buffalo Bill will now charge the Native Americans to enter the museum and look at things they themselves found on display for the whole world to see. And who is writing the history? The writing of the history is in the hands of the colonizers. They are presenting the history of the native people to the native people. And they're also extracting money for that. So, this is the system they're introducing, the system of civilization, the capitalistic exploitation. So, in this way, the poem is a very poignant critique of the system of colonization, the white adventurers who called themselves as adventurers and missionaries of civilization. It has been severely exposed and criticized by Alexie. So, from this poem, questions can be asked about what is the main theme of the poem. So, definitely the theme of the poem is obliteration and appropriation of indigenous American culture. Already I have discussed it thoroughly, and you can write it properly. And you can say that the museum which is built at the end of the poem through exploitation and erasure is what the title justifies. The de-evolution displayed by Buffalo Bill Museum omits the systemic violence and deception to gain the items which are now on display. Rather than being a depiction of Native American culture, the museum symbolizes the whitewashing and appropriation of indigenous culture. So the question of the title also can be answered. So the question on theme and title are very much possible. Similarly, sometimes the question can also be asked about the historical background or the or the idea of this civilizing mission, that how the poem exemplifies the civilizing mission of the colonizers. I hope you people will be able to do justice to this poem, and this poem very explicitly, very poignantly presents what Sherman Alexie stands for.